Welcome, everyone, to the Squid and Ultimate Leaf Fan Show. I'm Mike Wilson, the Ultimate Leafs fan. Joining me, as always, my winger, Ricky Squid Vibe. Squid, it's only 7 games in, but is it time for concern in Leafland? Now, let me preface that by saying there's always time for concern in Leafland, whether they're winning or not. It's just part of the DNA of who we are as fans.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's time to panic. I mean, I think you got to get into your. Well, like I said today to someone I was talking to, I said 30 games. I said if you're still around 500 after 30 games, something has to be done. Because it's pretty tough to catch up when you're only 500 after 30 games and you only have 52 games left. So I think you give them 30 games and see where they're at, and then you go from there.
Well, we know it's a small sample size, but anything startling standing out to you at this point? I mean, I know you'd like to see a little bit more time, and we know it's only a short window so far. But anything that I'll throw this one at you. I think that a casual observer, they'd notice the unforced giveaways, struggles on no end, and the slow play of the D as standouts right now that aren't working in Toronto's favor.
No, absolutely. A lot of those things. I mean, their defense has been a little porous at times. Um, there's been a lot of giveaways that have turned into breakaways, 2-on-1s, and those sorts of things. I mean, if you're going to give those up, your chances of winning are go down drastically. And I got to figure that something is going to happen. I think they gotta rectify that defense, and their forwards are going to have to play a little bit better in their own zone and come back a little deeper and not be taken off down ice as soon as their D, get a hold of the puck, because that's what's happening. I mean, yeah, everybody's blaming the D, and I think they do need to get better on the back end. But at the same time, as soon as they get the puck and they look up ice, there's no one there. They're all up at the far blue line or over the red line. How the heck are they supposed to get the goddamn puck to them?
No, I'm with you. I'm not giving the forwards a pass by any stretch of imagination with the sloppy play and exiting the defensive zone too quickly.
But that's their game plan, though, Mike.
They got
That's the
to.
thing. That's what bothers me more than anything is that's exactly how the management and the coaching staff want them to play.
Yeah, I'm I'm beside myself, watching this and going through this because, and I know it's an overused cliche, but it's very appropriate in this instance. They're not moving their feet enough. They're standing.
Yeah.
There's too much standing around too, and that this is in their own end.
Well, how many times you see other teams like you look at? I watched the Calgary game for a little while last night, and the D will go off the back end boards to his partner, and the centerman is coming down low and right about the hash marks in the middle of the ice, he gets a pass from the D, and they're on the move and they're going up ice with some speed. Four guys, sometimes even five, and we don't see that with the Maple Leafs. It's like get out of the zone and make those fresh passes that everybody knows how they play. So they just sit back and they intercept them and they go the other way in odd man situations.
Yeah, I mean that's very obvious. And the other thing is, or they'll chip it to the front of the net to a standing forward or centerman or the other D, and then expect everybody to move. And then you're trying to make that exit zone pass, and it's almost impossible. With you're looking at four oppositions in front of you, so it's no wonder the puck's being turned over, and
Well, it's one of
something
the
has to be
things
addressed.
that's one of the biggest things that I emphasize when I coach was make those short 10, 12-foot passes. If you can make one or two of those in your own zone and exit your zone as a group, you're going to have a lot more success. And of course, when I coached, there was a red line, so you
Yeah.
couldn't make those stretch passes anyway. So
No, but that's maybe they should make them play thinking there's a red line and start getting that into your mindset. But yeah, it's definitely something that's standing out right now. And the other part about it is teams watch film and they know how this club
oh yeah.
plays, and they know when you see the extra attention 34 is getting in 16 this year, they're forcing them
Hmm.
to the outside a lot. They've it's not like they're not trying. but they're having trouble separating themselves from the pack. And when that's filtering through the whole lineup and it starts right in their own end. And I know we don't want to belabor this, but that's the biggest issue that I see right now.
Well, I love the comments Matthews made when he was asked that question about getting frustrated and getting the heat, him and Mitch. And he just said, hey, we're getting our opportunities. We're hitting posts. We're shooting wide.
Yep.
Things are happening. He said, you know what? I mean, it's not going to last forever. We're going to start putting it in the net. And then all of a sudden, things are going to be right again and everybody's going to be happy. And I understand exactly what he's going through. And for him to say that, I thought that was perfect for the question.
Well, if we want to be perfect honest here, 16 and 34 who we're worried about. It's still everything below that is the concern. So,
yeah, well, I think when William Nylander has the most goals on your team after 7 games, it might be something to be a little bit alarmed about. But then again, hey, Marner and Matthews are going to start putting the puck in the net. And they're going to start, filling the net. We know that it's going to happen.
Well, let's talk about a couple of things that are developing in Leafland on that front. Wayne Simmons and Kyle Clifford. Kyle Clifford went on the IR today. Inserted in the lineup. First game produced a decent result. Game 2, not so much. Not that there were many others, that were doing anything much different. But when you're chasing the game with the big gun struggling, as we've just suggested, trying to find the back of the net, the results that we're seeing are speaking for themselves. And I mean, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, when you're playing from behind, there's no question that your kind of mindset within the game changes a little bit. And you try to, like I said, that's when they got 3 forwards at the blue line. They're trying to stretch out the ice and try to get some opportunities on odd man rushes or breakaways. I don't know if that's quite the right way to go about it. I think those short passes coming out of your own zone and going up ice with speed, I think would work a little bit better against teams that know how you're going to play. And we can go all the way back to when Montreal beat them out in the first round of the playoffs 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And what did they do? They just made sure they stayed between the puck and the Leaf player, and they intercepted a ton of passes that were labeled for the far blue line, and they went back the other way, and that's how they ended up winning that series.
Now, I don't want to I'm not giving by any stretch of imagination put a knock on Simmons or Clifford because they're doing the job they were hired to do, and they win. And then, as we said, they performed admirably. But do you think maybe it's a little bit early to slip them into the lineup? I mean, I do understand they need to play. They need to be active for down the road when they need them, when it gets tough in the trenches and the games start getting a little bit longer. But what does it do to the confidence for the guys you brought in to fill those roles? Nikas Abu-Kubel and Zach Austin Reese and Dennis Malgin, they all have NHL experience, so this is obviously isn't new to them to be sitting, because this is why they were Toronto in the first place. But I'm not of the mindset to let guys play their way through I'm more of the mindset to let guys play through the ups and downs. For at least, you mentioned 30 games, I'd said at least 20. And before, but otherwise, what's the point of having these guys in the lineup? Like, I know it's only one game, but still, you could see Malgin the other night when Robinson was alerted to the lineup and wasn't playing. His game completely changed that night. He looked like a totally different player.
Well, I think you're sending the wrong message by doing what they did. And that is that we don't trust you guys. So we're putting new guys in the lineup. And I mean, that's the wrong message to be sending to these guys this early in the season, that, hey, we brought you in here and now we don't think you're capable of helping us, so we're going to put someone else in the lineup. Well, I'm sorry, but, like you said, give them 20 games, let them figure it out. Let them, they're in a new city. They're with a new team. They're playing with new players. Things are going to be different. Everything's not going to click right away. Give them 20 games and see what happens at that point, and then go from there.
But that's so the whole point I'm trying to make here is, look, if the needle progression isn't moving after 20 games, then make the necessary adjustment. These guys are on PTO type contracts, but they're getting an NHL minimum, but they can still play with the Marlies. There's no salary cap with the Marlies. So if they have to be waived and play there, they can be waived and play there, and or just move them, because and you move them to the minor league team. But the fact is, by just hanging on and hanging on and hanging on and hoping, all you're doing is just you're just driving the player to play safe or to play not to make a mistake for fear of being scratched. And that to me is just lethal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can't play that way in the National Hockey League. And like I said, any given team on any given night can beat another team in the National Hockey League. They got good enough players that they can win a game. And, and if they're working harder than you are and they're relaxed and they're not worried about making mistakes, then, they're going to be a little bit tougher to play against. So, yeah, let these guys play. Just let them go out and do their job.
Yep, I agree with you. Now, Squid, I know you're going to be traveling the next couple of days, but I got a project for you if you can maybe squeeze some time in. Can you go when you get back and the Leafs get back from the road trip? Can you go down to the Ford Performance Center, wait for Pierre Enville to come outside, and then bounce him off the wall, and then just sort of say to him in your very captainly way, guys can only dream to have his size, his speed, his shot, his tenacity to chase down pucks when he wants to, and wake him the hell up and take advantage of this opportunity. I mean, he's playing himself right into a trade or no job. And the frustration we've expounded time and time again is we've seen the good side of this guy, which is good with lots and lots of upside. He has a chance to fill the void left by Ilya Mikheyev and be the guy driving that third line. But I don't know what's missing.
Well, not only driving that third line, I mean, he could easily move up to the second line on the left side.
Of course.
If he was playing the way he's capable of playing. And I mean, again, it's not time to panic about certain guys and that sort of thing. But I agree, he's got to play harder. He's got to play the way he played last year. And he hasn't been doing that. And he had a great year last year. If he was playing that way, he probably would be playing with Nylander and Tavares, more than likely.
Well, let's put your captain hat back on again. Once you finish visiting the Ford Center and maybe go to the meeting and have a chat with Pierre. Last week we spoke how you built Greg Terrian's confidence up at times when John Brophy was hard on his game. And in Engvall, in the same situation, we see him now being that type of player that just needs maybe like they're kicking the butt or just maybe a little more confidence. Have you ever dealt with a player who just needed a push or encouragement similar to what we're seeing, a guy who's as gifted as, say, Engvall was, but only in your time? And really all you needed was just the fact that it would allow him to know that you are a good player, you've got great skill sets. Just let your talent win over here and just start working.
Well, I mean, it depends on the individual, I guess, because some guys react differently to how you address things.
Yeah.
And, I always knew my players, read my players, what the guys that I had to kick in the rear, the guys I had to pat on the back. And, so I don't know what kind of a guy he is, how he responds. But I mean, if I would call him into my office and I would talk to him and just say, hey, there's a great opportunity for you right now here in Toronto, and we're not seeing you play the same way as you played last year when you had your best year. And we need to see that. And if so, there's going to be larger opportunities for you on this team going forward.
Now, as a captain, what would the conversation be?
That'd be a little different.
Yeah, there'd be a few swear words, probably.
Yeah, maybe a little push against the wall. Say, wake up. And then some expletives or whatever you call them. But yeah, I mean, it would be a much different conversation, more than likely.
But you would sort of end it with a couple of beers and maybe lunch. You'd even maybe pay for the lunch.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the best way to get something out of a player. I mean, the old days of yelling and screaming and cussing guys is over. I mean, these are professionals. They know what they're capable of doing. And I think maybe just a simple lunch, a couple of beers, and just, a nice chat about what he needs to do to get his game back on track.
No, but I heard Nathan McKinnon get interviewed the other day about the Spit and Chicos boys, and he said he was asked whether he was brought in the conversations when looking to acquire players or fill a hole of some sort as a lineup went on by Jer Bernard or Bednar or any of the or management. And he said yes, and he thinks players should be more involved, only from the standpoint, as a player yourself, you guys know what the game is from the real level and where the level of the game is played. You know what players are like away from the ice.
Mm-hmm.
You hear stories. You know what a guy's like in the room from other players. You guys have got your finger right on the source and on the buzz of what's really happening. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think it's great, to be honest with you. And I think I've said, how many times I've said it, I don't know, a million, that the players have a lot of power in the game today. And there's proof right there where they're calling the captain of the team and their best player, or arguably their best player, into meetings to discuss, what they need or what they need to do in order to get things back on track. Unfortunately, when I played, there was none of that. The coaches and the GMs did whatever the hell they wanted to do, and there was no meetings with the players or anything. The captain was never involved in any meetings with the coaches on decisions on who played or who didn't, or with the management on who to bring in or who to get rid of.
Well, and if you didn't agree, you guys, our friend Gavin Kirk told us on our podcast last week, you'll get what he got. Your equipment's waiting for you outside the room in the hall and said, get lost.
Yeah, so, that was one of the weirdest ones I've ever heard. But
yeah, for those of you who didn't listen, if you tune into our pod, we'll give a little shameless self plug here for our podcast. But listen to the Gavin Kirk podcast, how he got cut from Maple Leafs. It's a one-time classic, and I don't think you've ever heard that one. This doesn't even happen in minor hockey. Okay, this is one of the best of all time. Now, Sheldon Keefe called out the players last week. It was a topic of discussion. It faded away, but we can't ignore what's happening in Vancouver. I mean, a little bit over the top, wouldn't you say, all that's been going on there?
Well, I mean, they have a few injuries on defense, key injuries to some of their key players, which obviously doesn't help. But at the same time, I mean, this is a team that was expected to probably make the playoffs this year, and the way they finished last season. And they have the talent, they have the players. Like I said, they have a few injuries on the back end, which certainly uses out. And I mean, when a guy like that is out, a guy that runs your power play and makes things happen from the blue line, that's pretty difficult. But in saying that, 4 games in a row, they had a 2-goal lead at one point in the game and lost all 4 of those. So, or 3 or 4, I can't remember exactly how many, but they had a 2-goal lead in 3 or 4 of those games and lost. So, I don't know whether there needs to be a team player only meeting.
They've had one already.
Talk to one another, and I don't know what the heck the solution is there. I really don't. I mean, you signed some good players that contracts were up at the end of the year, and they should be better than they have been.
That's good. Let me stop you there. Player-only meeting, for our listeners, explain to them what goes on in a player-only meeting. Who speaks? Usually nobody says anything, or do they?
Well, I mean, I'm not really sure about today's players, but I know when we would do that, I mean, obviously the captain would say what he thought, and then we'd kind of go around the room and let everybody have their say and what they think the problem might be or the issues might be. And everybody had the opportunity to speak in those meetings. Sometimes guys didn't, sometimes they did. But, I think it's great if the players all give their opinion on what they think of why we're losing or why, what's going on.
Now, let me ask you this: was anybody ever critical of another player or a position, like the forwards critical of the defense, or vice versa, or even the goaltending, or something, or the coach, or something? Well, they always blame the coach, but outside of anybody in the room,
Well,
I would bet that it rarely happened.
no, there was lots of times where forwards blame the D, or the D blame the forwards, or the players blame the coach.
Any fights? Any fights?
No, I don't remember any fights in the room, but I mean, let's just say not quite arguments, but disagreements. I think
Okay, we'll leave it. We'll leave it at that.
there
And
was quite a few of those, Mike.
I'm sure there were a few in your day. Now, what I find ironic with this whole Vancouver situation is our good old friend Bruce Gabby Boudreau's taking the heat. He's got the guy in charge above him. He didn't hire him. Went in there last year and wouldn't extend him. Wouldn't extend him in the summer. Even shopped around for another coach throughout the summer. Gabby turned the team around last year and got them close to a playoff spot when they were,
Hmm.
far reaching, and the rearview mirror was in another county. Never mind, where they were coming from. And then this guy, Jim Rutherford, who left Pittsburgh under some strange circumstances in Pittsburgh, which we never found out about, then hires an inexperienced management team. Now he's turning around saying they weren't prepared. They had a terrible, brutal training camp. They're not prepared in
Yeah,
games,
I
and
heard
they've got a
that.
they got a lame duck coach. So first off, he's blaming like, where's the blame line here? And then go one step further higher to the owner who hired this guy in the first place, and they're all wondering why this is all going wrong. And now it's coming off the rails. Guess where the fingers pointing starting? Of course, Gabby's going to fight back. Now, the only
Yeah.
thing probably saving Gabby is they're already paying Travis Green. If they have to pay Gabby, and they're going to bring in a top-notch coach, if they're going to go after someone like Barry Trotz, he ain't coming for $1.5 million. He's going to cost them. So, do they really want to be paying $10 million a year in coaches' salaries when there's no assurance they're even going to get close to the playoffs at this point?
Well, I don't think they're too worried about having to pay multiple coaches, Mike. I'll be honest with you. I
Okay.
mean, it's a National Hockey League. The revenues that they generate are pretty large. I don't think that's something that they worry about. But
Okay.
I mean, at the same time, you don't want to have to do that. And you got a guy that had a pretty darn good record with this, pretty much the same team last year.
Yeah.
And I think again, it's one of those things where you just wait till the 20-25 game mark, see where you're at that point, and then you make decisions based on that. I don't think 6, 7, 8 games is enough to make any kind of conclusions as to whose fault it is, so to speak.
Well, where I'm going with this is Jim Rutherford should know better. With his experience and where he's
Yeah.
come from in the game, he should know better than to be shooting off in the press like he's doing and riling everybody up. I mean, as a player, you certainly had your fill of this type of gong show under the Ballard years. How much
Yep.
impact does stuff like this have on the team and in the room?
Well, it's funny. It probably has a negative impact right now, obviously, because things are not going the way that they would like them to go. But sometimes that can be the opposite effect, and the coaching staff and the players dig in and go, "Hold on a minute. Our general manager is blaming our coach and blaming all of us for what's going on. We gotta show them that that's not the case." And so sometimes that could have a positive effect depending on what he says exactly.
Well, where I'm coming from, and that is, how do you as players now look at the coach with any degree of confidence when it's all but written that he's getting the first bullet, even though it's only been 7 games?
Well, I mean, I guess that depends on whether the players like the style that they play with the coach, and they think they can win with the coach. And if they don't think they can win, and they don't like the system they're playing, or whatever the case might be, then it might not be good. But I think if they believe in them, and they got to do is look back to the last 25 games or so of last season
Yep.
and see how good they played, and realize that this is the same coach, almost the same lineup, with the exception of a couple of guys gone, and we can get it done.
Well, we'll defend our guy here and say it's not his fault. Gabby, you got our blessing to keep going, buddy.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Wild Squid, I think it's time we turn to quote of the week. This one, no, it's not only for the Leafs, but we're going to lend this one to Gabby and the Vancouver Canucks as well. Are you ready for this? We're going to help
I'm
these
ready.
guys, fellow Canadians. We're going to help them out here.
I'm ready.
There you go. Negative people need drama like oxygen. Stay positive. It'll take their breath away.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
And I'd have to agree.
You don't have to comment. It works.
Being positive is so important in team sports, and everybody being positive together, being positive that you have the right person leading you on the bench, the right guys leading you on the ice, and if you have that belief, then you can make things happen.
100%. Well, that's all for today, folks. Next week, same time, same place. Now, don't forget to tune into this week's episode of Squid and the Ultimate Leaf Fan. This week, we are missing a week because there's some traveling and some scheduling conflicts, but we're going to run a best of. So look for that. It drops Friday at 6 o'clock, and it's available on our Squid and Ultimate Leaf Fan YouTube page. You can see us get us on Spotify, the Ultimate Leaf Fan page. Look up Rick Five, or just look under any of your favorite podcast networks, and you'll find us there. But in the meantime, folks, let's wish the Leafs well for the rest of their road trip, and we'll talk to you guys next week.